We seek the truth.
Would you be handing your resignation to the Minister of Culture tomorrow, sir?
No, I will not.
The leader of the opposition, you have accused your government, sir, of using the Grenada Development Bank to facilitate the financing of personal loans for certain government ministers.
The other side is in no position to talk about those issues, and I will leave it there.
We discover new perspectives.
You know his leadership style, and so many are saying, why are you coming now to talk about those issues?
Now is the time to speak. You have the right to decide who will take over.
And you met with Dr. Mitchell, and perhaps you might want to confirm what that meeting was about in your response. But
Dr. Mitchell, like myself, are Grenadians.
We ask the right questions.
why was there no report on the work done of the commission? And how is this new committee different from the commission that was initially established back in 2022? So who are these elements that are using you?
I'm disappointed in my political leader.
And why is that animating those political conversations now?
It's a very interesting question.
The Bub Reports with Dr. Kellon Bub. Thought-provoking, truthful, unbiased, and truly original reporting.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Bub Report. I am, of course, your humble host, Dr. Kellon Bub, and we're happy that you can join us for yet another Sunday. Of course, this the July 20th edition of the program, and of course, we are counting down to Carnival, and we have a very important milestone summit taking place in Grenada as well in the build-up to Carnival. Of course, that is the AFREXIM Afri-Caribbean Trade and Investment Summit, conference forum that's happening in Grenada. In fact, I will be in Grenada for that, and that's something I'm very excited about. Given everything that's happening in the world, having that South-South pivot becomes so critical and so crucial. Now, for this week's editorial, news last week that the government of Grenada plans on giving consenting teenagers more autonomy and privacy over their healthcare decisions, especially in the context of sexual and reproductive health, is one of the many talks of the town in Grenada at the moment. Now, the NDC administration has submitted a bill for approval in Parliament that will attempt to reduce the age of civil responsibility from 18 to 16 years so that minors will not have to seek permission from parents or guardians when they require sexual and reproductive health treatment. Now, on the flip side of that, the government also announced that they were increasing the legal age, permitted age at which marriage can occur. Now, I'm not too sure why that shift, but that is a conversation we hope to have with the Attorney General when she appears on the program. The amendment is called the Age of Civil Legal Responsibility Amendment Act, and it will amend Section 4A of the principal legislation with the following, quote, consent to sexual and reproductive health treatment by minors, unquote. And it states as follows, notwithstanding any other law to the contrary, a minor who has attained the age of 16 years shall have the legal capacity to consent to any sexual or reproductive health treatment, including diagnostic procedures, and his or her consent shall be as effective as if that minor were of full age. But do we even know the colonial legacy of our consent laws in the first place? Now, the meaning of sexual consent changed in line with social shifts globally. Now, in the Victorian era, of course, that's the late Queen Victoria of England, Victorian legal changes reflected a number of contemporary, sometimes contradictory concerns at that time around issues of child welfare, working class disorder, and what the Victorian era, people in the Victorian era called sexual disorder and sexual immorality. Now, the age of consent was changed for the first time in the 19th century in 1875, when the felony clause was raised from 10 to 12 and the misdemeanor clause from 12 to 13. Now, it was in 1885, however, that the most significant change took place in the wake of a newspaper expose of the so-called white slave trade in young girls in England. Now, a public interest in child protection drove the passage of this criminal law into the law books, which of course made its way all over throughout the British Commonwealth. Well, of course, it was not the Commonwealth at the time, it were British colonies, of which a lot of our laws are inherited from. But its finer details were concerned as much with control of young girls as with protection. The law, which sets the felony age at 13 at the time and misdemeanor age at 16, reflected a particular late Victorian conflict between the promotion of child protection and a perceived need to regulate juvenile sexual behavior. In 1885, the focus of lawmakers was firmly on the question of female capacity in two forms: the capacity to consent and the capacity to control emergent sexual behavior. Now notice, there is no mention of male sexual behavior, no mention of male consent here. Now, given consent was thought too much of a responsibility for girls before they had adequate mental maturity, which apparently came later than physical development. Now, before full maturity, physical and mental, girls were thought to need protection, not only from men, but also from their own new and what the Victorian era called disorderly sexual feelings, unquote. Now, of course, that's what we call puberty these days. Now, the question of capacity was a double-edged one. It complemented a child protection agenda, but also supported those who feared that girls, especially working class girls, would fall, again, the language fall here is used to describe the taking of virginity early, and therefore girls should not be given the opportunity to do so. Now, this balance between protection and control ran throughout much of Victorian era British legislation. It would be a mistake to assume that our current focus on child protection has always underpinned sexual consent legislation. In fact, it wasn't, as the history demonstrated. Indeed, even over the last 50 years, policymakers have fitted between advocating the relaxation of sexual consent law to allow healthy sexual relationships between consenting teenagers and tightening it to protect children. Now, while the focus now primarily is on the latter, there are still multiple stances on this issue. There were some campaigns to lower the age of sexual consent in the 1970s, particularly between consenting youth, but revelations about the extent of child sexual abuse limited the influence of such discussions. And of course, before we go to the break, folks, the Bub Report wishes to pay tribute to the late Kenton Fry Roberts of Williamson Road in St. George. Now, Roberts, a former member of the Honved Football Club and, of course, the greatest steel band orchestra in Grenada, the New Dimension Steel Band Orchestra, that's just my bias, was also a football coach and a former employee of the Grenada Postal Corporation. I came to know Fry during my formative years growing up in the Grenville Street Four Roads community. He was also a co-worker to my late grandmother, Wilfina Williams, who also lived on Four Roads. Now, Mr. Roberts was a good man with many talents that he was willing to share and impart with young people in his community. His kindness and positive demeanor was a reflection of the sense of community and love that his mother, Miss Aggie, demonstrated. Fry's untimely passing is another reminder of the fragility of life. Now, may his soul rest in peace, and may his memory be a blessing. Folks, this is the Bub Report. Please kindly like and share this week's live stream, and we will come back for the first segment of our program with a young and budding Grenadian creative who is chasing the dream of becoming a mainstay of creative expression in Grenada. So we'll be back for that conversation with that young Grenadian creator shortly. So folks, please stand by. We'll be right back after this.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
And folks, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bub Report. And of course, concerning this week's editorial, some of our viewers are already chiming in on that question. Akim Lewis, good morning, Brother Lewis. He is saying here, let me pull up the comment. I totally agree with you. Simple common sense. I also think they should make the legal age to 18 years old, since I guess everything starts at 18. I'm not too sure what he's saying here. Onika is saying, I agree that change if the age of consent is 16. How can you legally be allowed to participate in sexual activities but need parental consent for healthcare services? That's a very interesting point. Then we have another comment here before we get to our first guest. Let's be honest, many young girls today are engaging in sexual activity without their parents' knowledge. Mr. Williams, I will correct you there. It's not only young girls, it's also young men. And we also have a problem in our society where a teenager is impregnated. She is expelled from her high school. But in many cases, the young man is not expelled from the high school. That has happened historically in Grenada, and not only in Grenada, but in the Caribbean. That needs to be fixed. If we're going to have one standard of accountability for girls, then we should also have one standard of accountability for boys. But the problem is these conversations are often avoided or completely absent in the home. I agree with you. As a result, some girls, not only girls, but boys, contract sexually transmitted infections and keep it a secret, not realizing the long-term consequences that this can have on their health, especially when it comes to fertility and childbirth later on. And yes, for boys and girls, I think a lot of sex education happens informally. A lot of those conversations, parents do not want to have those conversations with their children. And sometimes you find out about these issues in ways that are not necessarily in keeping with how we should think about consent and other things. And in this age of social media, many young people go onto the internet, and let's be honest, they look at pornography and things like that, which gives them sort of a warped view of issues of sex, sexual relations, consent, STDs, and things like that. So absolutely, those conversations need to happen, and we'll be having a full-on conversation on this in another edition of the Bub Report. But at this time, folks, we want to welcome our first guest for this week's installment of the Bub Report. We are joined by a young Grenadian creative who has his eyes set on pursuing a career in the performing arts as an actor and performance artist. Now, this creative founded his own performing arts company and has his eyes set on honing this skill with a study abroad experience, either in Jamaica or in the United States. Now, he turned to making a public appeal for financial support to finance and fund his studies. And the public appeal is a reflection of the challenges that many Grenadians tend to face when attempting to seek higher educational opportunities abroad outside of Grenada. Now, of course, that public appeal reminded me of my own experience when I was awarded a scholarship to study in Taiwan. That was back in 2004. And now, without the benevolence of my stepfather, David Brown, and I want to shout out my stepdad now, he's the one that co-signed the loan for me. It was a soft loan that I had to get at the Grenada Development Bank at the time, because even though you were awarded the scholarship, that scholarship did not pay for a lot of things. And that's also sort of a misconception, that you get a scholarship, but sometimes that scholarship does not fund everything. So in many respects, people have to seek funding in other ways in order to fund their studies. So happy am I to be joined by Alistair Amade. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct, brother. Welcome to the Bob Report, sir.
Amada. Good morning, Doc.
Amada, yes. Good morning.
Good morning, Doc. I am doing well. Since Happy Hill Secondary School, people had the issue with Amada and Amadi. I always had to say it's Amada and not Amadi. Amadi ends with the E. Amada ends with the E.
Yes.
But family at the end of the day. But it's Amada and Amadi.
Very well. Thank you for that correction. So welcome to the program. Welcome to the program. Now, of course, we've seen you. I've seen some of your work on social media. Talk to us about your interest in the performing arts and the creative arts. Is that something? Is that a particular passion that you discovered at Happy Hill Secondary School?
Well, discovery transpired way back before Happy Hill Secondary School. It occurred in Heinze, 10, the age between, could have been kindergarten to grade 1 or grade 2. Church and primary school it started, right? And since I was a child, like I said, who know my story, since I was a child, once I got the opportunity to act, like all of us as children, skits, so on. Once I got the opportunity, it's like something clicked in me. Always when I watched, I was a 90s baby, so always when I watched movies like Chuck Norris, movies, Stallone, and all, and we know the works of the 90s, right? I always saw myself there. And I stick to it, primary, secondary, and up to today. I always saw myself as a creative, an actor, and no matter the challenges, and there's a lot. Over the years, it has been a lot. But I always say determination is my genetic trait. The Lord know why he wired me, and in wiring me, he said, hey, this guy will need a lot of determination. At times I take mental breaks, but I tell people I'm not wired to give up. That's why I'm here again. That's why I'm back on the program and about to share with you guys a few challenges I am having. But there is hope, there is light, because, and I'm going to establish this point because through this administration, our creative voices are being heard. The process is slow for certain things in the art form because as an actor, yes, the foundation is there. Yes, I am a registered creative. But like everything in life, change takes time. And whenever you're going against the status quo, and I like to see paradigm shift. Whenever you're going against a paradigm and establishing a new paradigm, it will always be challenging. So again, I'm going to commend this administration. I'm going to commend Goka for what they have been doing for the last approximately, Bob help me with 3 years, right? For the last 3 years.
Yes, sir, 3 years. Yes, sir.
Yes. After Columbia College and after I canceled, it was so exasperating. It was so stressful. I took a break. I said, you know what? I done with it. People that know me personally, I say, I don't want to hear nothing. I don't want to hear. And if you who know me, they know at times I could be very obstinate, stubborn, right? But when this administration came and talked about the creative conversation and registry, I was one of the first to register, and my voice was heard and unleashed. And like I said, now we're having the conversation. But Edna Manley College in Jamaica is my personal passion, my goal. That's different. So the challenging is a little more because certain things, especially educationally, is not in place yet. But when I see there is hope, there is hope. But certain information for now, I cannot share as yet. But as time goes by in the interview, I'm going to explain and so on what I can explain and what I can divulge. But
of course, you know, yes, Edna Manley College, Francis Urias Peters, and other brilliant Grenadian artists attended Edna Manley College. So as I was saying in the lead up to this, you know, getting accepted into a college, getting accepted into a university is one thing, but having the benefactors to support that is another. And notwithstanding, we do have a scholarship desk now, where scholarship opportunities are offered for different fields. Back in my day, you really didn't have a scholarship desk per se. And many people who go off to study, a lot of the time, you know, that they get their family members to co-sign loans and things like that. And I think what your story is highlighting here is just this challenge that a lot of Grenadians face, quite frankly, when attempting to pursue higher education, right? It's, yes, people see the cap and gown at the end of the process, but they don't see the challenges that come with that. As I said, sometimes you might need people to support your efforts throughout the process. It takes a village, right?
Yeah,
so,
it takes a... Go ahead.
Yes. Do you feel as if in your case that people have rallied around you, your community has rallied around you to support this cause that you have?
What I can say, Bob, I love the question. I love the question. One of the main challenges to start off the question is it's mentally draining, mentally fatigued. Thank God I have the mental fortitude, His grace, His strength, His mercies on my life. And speaking about the community, I have been getting feedback from a persons personally within my community. There's one or two persons that reached out to me. We had conversations and so on. You see, back with Edna Manley under the former administration, where I had a lot of gripe with, a lot of gripe professionally, right? And I respect them like I respect all politicians, but my gripe creatively, this is one of the main reasons I'm supporting this administration. And speaking about, because of this administration, that's why I am doing this. I have been making a lot of investments. I have been investing for the last 3 years after TAMCC, 3-4 years directly into my bachelor's, into my creative company, Team Lyrical. And speaking about my creative company, through this administration, I got through with trademark for Team Lyrical. I did a collaborative production, Breaking Point, last year. I have been working with persons as Lazy Sunday, Charlton Prince, and other creatives within Grenada. And persons that know me would tell you, hey, this guy don't give up. This guy don't. But I must congratulate those within my community. It really means a lot, because as a creative, like when I do things like this, like Edna Manley College in the beginning, I said, Lord, it's the same mountain I'm going up. It's the same mountain, the same struggle. It's the same, in the beginning, the same set of delays and so on. And trust me, for many would not do what I'm doing. Currently, Team Miracle, I operate alone right now. I operate alone because a lot of persons in Grenada, they don't understand the art form. They have an idea about the art form, but they don't have the appreciation and the education, the enlightenment basically about the art form, because enlightenment goes a little deeper than education, you know. And I tell people sometimes, you know, enough times in recruiting persons, and I'm telling you, it's a lot, especially as a young man, not an expert in the art form. That is one reason, again, why I'm going towards my bachelor's in acting in a fine arts program. Really establish myself, my brand. I've been born and I've been doing spoken word pieces. I fall back on whenever I'm off the stage theatrically. I've written over 100 and something pieces, edited a few into MCC, and I've been just doing the work. But again, the frustration, the stigma, it is still there, but there is hope right now through this administration. But I'm telling you, because culture takes time to change sociologically, socioculture, and it takes time to change. Rome wasn't built in a day. But again, there is hope. Again, thank you for all the persons that have been reaching out to me, talking. Eventually, by faith, eventually, I'm telling you, the way things are going right now, I am cool, but a part of me excited. But again, I'm just doing what I need to do to let this dream come to pass and not dry up like a raisin in the sun.
Like a raisin, that was a poetic line there. Nice poetic line there. So what is your overall dream following the completion of your studies? What can Grenada expect of you following the completion? And you have to put that positive energy out there when you come back to Grenada. Do you hope to get to, so for example, we have several theater companies in Grenada. We have Heritage, we have Family Theater Company, and so on. We have people who do a lot of spoken word and all of those things. What do you hope to get out of your eventual plan of study? And how will Grenada benefit from that in that creative space?
What I can see regarding this question after Edna College, obviously, creatively, I'm hoping to get one or two of my ideas off of the ground through collaboration, because that's one big thing I'm big on, making connections, doing my research in Jamaica creatively to come back in Grenada and really see where I can do probably work in the area of theater and film, especially theater and film. But that conversation is ongoing right now, because whatever certain opportunities, how it may present itself, yes, I seeking to come back automatically in Grenada, but if there's an option regionally within the diaspora or whatnot, I am not definitive as yet. You know how life happens, but the bigger goal is really having that creative presence wherever I go. Creative stamp, creative mark, because for me, theater is evolving. And it's time, we in Grenada, we behind, right? Just to make this important point, and why I'm saying this, because last year I participated in Youth Parliament, right? And a part of Youth Parliament, I did some research. And the moot was universal education. I operate as a shadow minister for Minister of Culture and Creative Affairs. Now, within that, I discovered something, that creative economy, the orange economy, has been going on since 1974. No, 1950, 1964, about that, 1964. And a lot of other countries are having creative conversations. So it's not just coming and do typical theater for me, but it's really properly getting into the regional and international creative conversation and lift Grenada, lift the region. Primarily Grenada first, but There's a lot of creative conversations that we have not been in, especially theater, film, the performing arts. And I believe as a youth, with the passion, the talent that will be honed and developed in Jamaica. Jamaica, watch out, because I come in. I tell you, I come in. And who know me like that? Once I'm in the room, once I'm there, my presence will be felt. And that is one of the reasons why I am passionate, because there's a lot going on in Jamaica. There's a lot going on in the world, especially screenplay. We behind. We have our own story to tell, right? It bothers me. I am perturbed that, look at couple years ago, you had Pirates of the Caribbean being filmed in the Caribbean, right? But that's our story. That's Masa's story. That's basically the white man's story. What about our story? What about collaborating locally? What about, and creatively, not systematically, I'm speaking, but creatively, we need to come together more. We need to join forces, yes, creatively, because yes, this administration is doing, but as creatives, I am saying on this program, let's join hand in hand. Let's take Grenada out of the Middle Ages. Why I'm saying the Middle Ages? Because the world is already in front of us. The world is already in front of us. Yes, Jamaica started long. Trinidad come in. Trinidad have its own academic school, college, right? Let's get into the conversation. Couple years ago, I remembered when this actor came into Grenada, Steven Seagal, with all the respect, and the administration at the time speaking about foreign investors and willing to work. Why, when international creatives back then came into Grenada, it's time, and yes, I know the process has started. It's time for we to make the right connection, and that is why I am so passionate about Edna Manley College. No matter the trials, no matter the struggles, right? Things are working out by faith, and I am seeing things are happening. But again, for the creative, the performing arts specifically, let's unite. Let's join hand in hand, young, not so young, and build and tell our own story. It's time to tell our own story. So the world, we have the jab, we have fed on, we have so much, we have the revolution. Yes, we have so much in Grenada to say. Let's tell our story.
Yes, I would certainly endorse that part about telling. There's so many uncovered histories. Well, quite frankly, they're hidden in books, and because because I'm a voracious reader, I am really a voracious reader. That there are so many anecdotes in books. I'm going to go find that book, and maybe you can write a story on that from Bernard Cord's Skyred, A Tale of Two Grenada Revolutions. But a lot of the anecdotes in his book talks about that Skyred period, about what people were doing in that period, about the protests that were happening, about a young Eric Gary in the market square, and about the battleships that were coming to. There's so many stories. There's so many stories about people, about the Grenadian experience that need to be told in things like film, right? And there is such a niche for that. There is a potential niche for that to occur. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you, but go ahead. Yeah.
Let me say, speaking about film, because last year I participated in a stage play with Ricardo Keynes Douglas, one of my mentors, and it was about Grenada history. And I delved into Grenada history, and I got passionate about it, because a literature student is a history student, Dr. Bob, right? Once
Naturally, I didn't like history, but because I fell in love with the art form and literature, I automatically fell in love with the history side of it. Now, we have so much stories. And listen, the creative industry, it's viable. I hope I'm using the right word. It's profitable, right? It's it's a lucrative industry. And for me, we have been wasting time. For me, we have why it have to take. Yes, this administration started the conversation. Yes, but why it have to take this administration? Why? And why I'm doing this because for years, Bob, Doctor, and I've said it on this program already. Through Team Lyrical, I met actors and actresses that that there was this young lady that joined my creative organization in the beginning, and this young lady was so good, but she's into the medical field. She would just sit there and cry on the spot. Just and I was like, wow. I was like, wow. And the point is I am making, you have persons just like mangoes and other fruits just wasting. You have talent wasting for years. Calypsonian and soca mona, calypso and soca artists for years been crying out, for years. Look at where the world is. And no, yes, we have started, but we should have been far ahead creatively. We should have been far ahead, and I'm so passionate about it. That's why I'm not giving up, because it's not just myself, but what about for years the young people we have been marginalized creatively? Oh, you're an actor. Oh, you're a poet. Oh, well, you can't do nothing with this. Alistair, why try something different? Go into the listen. A lot of people say, Alistair, you make a good police. Alistair, you make a good lawyer. Alistair, boy, you could communicate. Why you don't do this and listen? I know I make a good psychologist. I know I make a good counselor. I know I make a good lawyer. I know why, because I know my potential, and that's why I love acting. Because when I commit to a role, I become the role. I play the role the best of my ability. That's why I'm not giving up on the performing arts. And it's not, I don't believe in committing to societal constraints or portraits, basically, the picture society want me to be. I believe we should be forming our own destiny and doing what we love. So society can't say be alive when I want to be an actor. Society, through the psychological imagination, society that needs to get its act together on a whole. And I'm speaking to the general public here. I'm speaking to all Grenadians, because outside of Grenada, creatives are adored, or basically, let me use the terminology worship. I know it would be too strong, but they are worship in other parts of the world, because the appreciation, the value, it's there, right? And a lot of our actors in Grenada, is a fact, is better than a lot of those on the international stage. I know that for a fact. I have seen it back.
Yeah. So now, Alistair, you're making some very salient points. So I would go over to you now for some closing comments, because we definitely have to get to the next segment there. But talk to us about, again, you've articulated your vision, you've articulated what you hope to accomplish. So hopefully, we will be seeing you going off, and of course, not only representing yourself, but representing Grenada as well, to show what talent can come from Grenada. So over to you for now for some closing comments.
Well, in closing, I want to say, for those who are hearing me for the first time, specifically in the diaspora, and others who have been hearing me, my advocacy will not stop. It will continue as a young advocate and a young creative, because I believe my voice and our voice is being heard. But you guys can contact me, right? Who want to pledge, who want to make a contribution. I am in the process of raising funds as we speak, and the conversation is going on, and things are working out. So my contact number is 414-7032. area code 1473 for those in the diaspora, 414-7032, Alista Amada. You can send me a message on WhatsApp, IG, Facebook. I'm on social media. Type in my name, Allister. And we can have that conversation, and anybody that were willing to give, donate, it's greatly appreciated. Doc, thank you for having me on this program again. It's an honor being on your program again, and I just want to compliment you for what you're doing. Thanks again. It means a lot. It really means a lot, because coming on a program like this to really share some of the challenges and struggles, it will not stop overnight, but the process has started, and that's why I'm hopeful. Creatively, the process has started. And in closing, again, I want to compliment Goka specifically for what they're doing, and continue doing what you guys are doing. Any persons that are willing that have not yet registered creatively, you can still do so to be a part of the creative conversation with the workshops and meetings we does all be having as registered creative. And I close. Thanks again.
Absolutely, Alice Amada. I'm not going to make that mistake again. Thank you, sir, for appearing on the Bub Report this week. Folks, this is the Bub Report. Of course, we just had a conversation here with a young Grenadian creative, Alister Amada, who has his eyes set on pursuing higher education at the Edna Manley College in Jamaica. Really here talking about some of the challenges that creatives like himself face in pursuing higher education. Of course, there's always the perception that we're still boxed into certain types of careers and certain types of academic activity that is seen as more respectable than others. So that's one of the things that he highlighted that I think it's important to take note of. So for the next segment of the program, folks, we'll be having a conversation on carnival. We'll be having a conversation on carnival. But just before we go to the break, I have in my hand here Bernard Cord's book, one of his books, Sky Red, A Tale of Two Revolutions. Now, one of the interesting anecdotes from this book, which I'm currently reading, I'm hoping to get through it by next week. But he talks about the tale of when Sir Eric walked on water. I'm sure many of you remember that there was a story of Eric Gary walking on water. And I'll just read one quick excerpt. So the meeting was advertised for 7 p.m. That was on the Carnage back then. My father and I went early hoping to get a good vantage point. There was already a huge crowd. Apart from Gary's supporters, there were hundreds more who had come out of curiosity. These included what seemed like all the children from the Carnage area and surrounding streets. This was political melodrama not to be missed by anyone. The meeting began with the usual praise and singing of hymns. With the completion of the last hymn, as on cue, someone shouted, "Look, Uncle coming," meaning Uncle Gary here. I looked out to see, like everyone else, to see a darkly painted schooner at the entrance to Grenada's inner harbor, headed straight for where we all were. That was in front of the fire station down there on the Carnage. Compared with tourist liners and other large ships, schooners were small, made out of wood, with decks only a few feet from the surface of the water. The darkly painted schooner traveled towards us at a snail's pace on a moonless night. I could see only one light on board. It was suspended above Gary's head, illuminating his face and the upper part of the white suit he wore. The boat sat so low on the water that Gary, standing erect on its deck, could conceivably have been walking on water at the distance he still was from where we all were. At least there was the symbolism of him gliding slowly on the glass smooth surface of the calm water of St. George's inner harbor. His supporters burst into loud cheering, while even many non-supporters clapped with this innovative addition to Grenada's political repertoire. So Gary actually never walked on water. He created some theater around that. I always wondered about that story, but that is something that can actually, be put in a play of some sort. So many Grenadians have written such amazing history of our own history that I think can be documented in musicals and plays like that. So folks, this is the Bub Report. We're going to take a quick break now and come back with the second segment of the program. Please stand by for that.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Take effort. And I don't think, and I think Karen made a very salient point about accountability. Who is putting the hands up and saying, okay, I'm responsible, this falls on my plate? Is the CEO going to tender his resignation and said, I failed in my duties? Is the board of directors going to step aside, the chairman going to step aside? Are we going to just say, oh, you just cock on them, they just grievances, push everything under the carpet, and then we start all over again next May? Cook, as one of the CEOs of Spice Mass, knows that the act speaks to the promotion of carnival. You have an entire body whose responsibility is just to promote the event. It doesn't speak to the development of the different sectors of carnival. Promote it, but you cannot start promoting it in May and June and expect to resuscitate the energies.
When it comes to the board is consists of a lot of people who shouldn't even be on the board. And then also, does the board even understand the role of the board, which is policy? Okay, what are we doing to develop? What are they doing to develop the product in its sense? As Dexter said, the promotion, that's the role of the Spice Mass Corporation. What are they doing? No, you know what they're doing? They've got their hands in logistics. They've got their hands definitely in the VIP booths. They've got their hands in everything except policy. Okay, what is happening with Carnival? Do we need to turn it around? Is the carnage no longer suitable because the product is growing? Those are the conversations the board needs to be having. And then at the same time, you have to have an efficient office with a competent CEO, understanding what is crucial is logistics. And yes, I do agree that we need a mix of young and old, because let me tell you something. Y and Z may have an issue with time. And we have to understand it's not just about the revelers. We're forgetting that we also have a spectator product. Okay, so timing is important. I think that the board needs to be redone with competent people in the field. Okay, not because I play mass mean I know nothing about mass. Okay, we need competent people, and we need a competent, structured office with people in there who understand things like logistics, because a lot of the issues that we're talking about, why Carnival would have gotten a C- is logistical.
Of course, viewers and listeners, that was just a quick recap of the conversation we had here on the Bub Report, parts of the conversation that we had here on the Bub Report last year concerning Spice Mass 2024. Now, of course, as Grenada gets ready to host another Spice Mass Summer Carnival, we sit with the CEO of the Spice Mass Corporation. Of course, those issues that the two former chairmen here raised are issues we, in fact, raised with the chairman last year. And of course, Mr. Cecil Noel is joining us again before he gets really busy. And of course, I know he's probably busy as well, to discuss plans for hosting this year's event. Now, last year when Mr. Noel appeared on the program, several issues animated our conversation concerning the quality of and the execution of Grenada's premier national event. Now, to be charitable, Mr. Noel and his team was given a failing grade by some of the partners in mass. Of course, he disagreed with that. But for this conversation, however, we will not only discuss the current state of mass preparations, but also follow up on some of what we discussed last year on the program. So I'm happy now to be joined by Mr. Cecil Noel, who is the CEO of the Spice Mass Corporation. Brother Noel, I hope I did not take you away from church this morning, and that perhaps you prayed for me and you prayed for the national community for a safe carnival this year, sir. Welcome. Just unmute the mic there, sir.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Thanks very much for having me on the program.
Yes.
And before we get going, I'm not sure if you can give me a little more volume. I'm not hearing you properly. You did. I just thought I was hearing it fine, but I'm not hearing you as clear.
Oh, you are not hearing me. Just hold on. I'll put you backstage and have you come back in again. Hold on. So let's see. Mr. Noel said he's not hearing me too clear there. So let's see. Are you hearing me better now?
It's the same thing, but I mean, if that's what can be done, I know I'd played just some other things play and I was hearing them louder.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, as I said, thank you so much for having me on the program. It's a pleasure. I always, appreciate having to be able to, as I say, communicate with my people, because my endeavor really is, whenever I get on program like this, is to make sure that people are informed, people are educated in terms of whatever information that needs to be disseminated. So I do hope that, that will be the outcome of this intercourse, this discussion this morning.
Mm-hmm. So last year, Mr. And maybe I will try to speak louder. Now, on last year's conversation, you indicated that we were going to have a post-mortem for what happened and what will be done to improve some of the deficiencies of last year's carnival. Now, let us talk about, I think you still can't hear me, right? Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you, but not proper at all. It's fading.
Yeah. All right. Just give me 1 second. We'll be right back, folks. Let's see what we can do to resolve that issue with Cecil Noel there. We'll be right back. Folks, just stand by. Let us see if we can adjust Mr. Noel's audio there.
Go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me here for much more than diplomatic passports. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this. So I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bub Report. We go there.
We We seek the truth.
Would you be handing your resignation to the Minister of Culture tomorrow, sir?
No, I will not.
The leader of the opposition, we have accused your government, sir, of using the Grenada Development Bank to facilitate the financing of personal loans for certain government ministers.
The other side is in no position to talk about those issues, and I will leave it there.
We discover new perspectives.
You know his leadership style, and so many are saying, why are you coming now to talk about those issues?
Now is the time to speak. You have the right to decide who will take over.
And you met with Dr. Mitchell, and perhaps you might want to confirm what that meeting was about in your response. But
Dr. Mitchell, like myself, are Grenadians.
We ask the right questions.
Why was there no report on the work done of the commission? And how is this new committee different from the commission that was initially established back in 2022? So who are these elements that are using you?
I'm disappointed in my political leader.
And why is that animating those political conversations now?
This is a very interesting question.
The Bub Reports with Dr. Kellon Bub. Thought-provoking, truthful, unbiased, and truly original reporting.
And folks, welcome back to the program. We are still attempting to sort out Mr. Noel's audio there. He seemed not to hear me. Of course, you guys, I'm sure the audience can hear me, but he seems to have an issue with hearing me. Mr. Noel, I'm not too sure if the sound has improved. Are you still hearing me with a lower volume?
No, it has improved. Definitely.
It has improved. Very well.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Very well. I'm glad. Now,
Yeah.
now in last year's conversation that we had, of course, I did ask if you were going to submit your resignation to the minister. Remember that? And now you're part of an entire promo now, promo reel. But you did indicate in that conversation we had last year that there will be a postmortem, and that postmortem will be examining some of the pitfalls of Spice Mass last year. Mm-hmm. And with respect to how to improve on those deficiencies. Now, can you talk about the postmortem that was done, and what was some key conclusions that came out of that postmortem?
Yes, so they said we had a symposium, well attended. A lot of information came out of that. It's as I said, it has been several pages, but some of the key points that came out from those discussions that need to be addressed. For example, the whole question, I know production was a key one, mm-hmm. that events be produced. The question with respect to the staffing both in terms of the quantity of staff as well as the actual person responsible, to be made responsible in a different area. Those were very, forefront. Of course, the question of the finances towards Spice Mass, that it be increased. And there were, a host of other matters looked at, management, what happened with venue and different things. But as I said, those I think were some of the key points with respect to how we move forward. So highlighting on those. So for example, I can tell you, I mentioned production, mm-hmm. and efforts were in fact made for 2025 to have events, as much as events as possible being produced, including what happened on the road. We will appreciate though, in terms of the road, for whatever reason, the should I say the uptake for different reasons from people were not as forthcoming as we would have liked. But we will see the major events improve. We would see them being produced from Kiddies Carnival all the way back to Dimagra. And yes, we have discussion with a few people that will be working with us in terms of what happened on the road as well. Mm-hmm. The question of staffing, that was also looked at. You will appreciate, based on the budget we had, there were some constraints there, so we were not able to do much in terms of increased staffing for 2025, but it's definitely on the table. And maybe I should add, the other thing I mentioned was finance. And I was informed, I would say, that government will be pumping some additional funds into Spice Mass. Now, that in itself will also allow for the additional people in terms of staffing. As it is right now, we operate, and we really would like to have like a qualified person in terms of marketing of the events and of the brand itself. Logistics, a full-time logistics officer. We even look at an event planner, and those are some of the areas that need to be filled. And it is our expectation that for 2026, those will be. And as I say, the reason why they were not for 2025 predominantly had to do with the budget. Based on the budget we have, if we were to take on these additional people, we definitely would have been in some challenges in terms of meeting our financial obligations. So yeah.
Yeah, no, but because a big part of what the criticism that the SMC received last year was that question of logistics. So yes, you're referencing the production of shows. Will that be, would the logistical aspect of that be considered as well? So for example, last year you had competing non-SMC events happening at around the time when there ought to have been a transition with SMC events, right? At the stadium venue, you had issues with the sanitary facilities at the stadium as well. You had issues with shows starting late, and several logistical issues with respect to the road experience, ensuring that things like Juve, for example, starting on time. And of course, you can't necessarily fault the SMC for that one altogether, but at the same time ensuring that the marshals are there. So with all of those elements, would those be considered as well in the context of production? Because I hear talking about the production of shows, but there has to be at the back end of that the big picture logistics here as well.
And the answer to that is yes, and it's already in gear. So for example, we have a logistics team in place, which is working on with regards to those events, and that logistics team is making sure everything that requires from the venue with respect to what happened, let's say at the stadium, and including what happened on the road. So you mentioned some of the issues there, and I'm really glad that you also took the opportunity to say, some of those were not as a result of, let's say, Spice Mass not doing what they're supposed to do. And you are correct. For most part, almost all that you mentioned there. If I could sit there and tell you, it was not as a result of Spice Mass not doing what they're supposed to do. You spoke about the sanitary situation. That was addressed since last year, and we do hope that we do not have any such situation coming up again. So the venue operators, that was addressed with them. Nothing that we could have done with respect to when that happened, more than to work with them to ensure that one, it was fixed, and in the case of going forward, that there isn't a repeat of it. You also make mention in terms of the venue and other activities happening there. So let me just take a while, for example, to give you some information with respect to the venue. This year, we'll be moving to the National Cricket Stadium. And the plan and the work already started, stage, I would say, probably 3/4 way up. And what we are going to do, we're going to have 2 stages at the National Stadium, and that is all geared for a number of reasons. One, to alleviate some of the problems that were experienced last year, which you just made mention of. But in addition to that, to also satisfy our stakeholders. So I will explain. In the case of the panorama, the Children's Carnival Frolic, and the Power and the Soca Monarch competition, there's going to be one big stage constructed for that. It's, as I said, it's very much far in advance in its being in place. And that stage is going to be facing the main pavilion at the National Cricket Stadium. So we have that stage. It's going to be approximately 40 by 100. As I say, we have to accommodate the steel band. The steel band have been growing, especially in the junior panorama area, and we definitely need to accommodate them. So that big stage is going to be put there. It's way back from the main stand, and that is primarily to accommodate the crowd expected for Soca Monarch. So what we're going to do, because panorama in itself, it's more intimate, things like bleachers, we are going to have some bleachers to ensure that the patrons for panorama sits closer to the stage. We also have the Children's Carnival Frolic that is going to be on that. And again, that fall in lines because in the Children's Carnival Frolic, we have 3 events in one. You have the mass band aspect, which comprises both traditional and fancy mass band. You have the junior panorama, and then you have the junior calypso. So those are going to be on that big stage that faces the main stand. And at the Royal Louis Junior Murray Pavilion, you're going to have another stage there, and that is designed for the more intimate events, primarily the Queen Pageant as well as the Mardi Gras. And those are some of the things put in place from a logistic as well as production standpoint to ensure that stakeholders are satisfied, to ensure that the patrons, spectators, they themselves are happier with the arrangement. And of course, to minimize any issues that may or could have arisen should we be using one stage for all the events. So those are based on your points. Those are some of the issues there.
Now, last year as well, you know, folks, some of the stakeholders complained that there was a bit of a lack of communication between the board and the stakeholders themselves. Is that a conversation you had in your postmortem, or is that a conversation you had with the stakeholders? And what will that look like in respect of improving communication? Or do you feel as if perhaps their understanding of what communication was probably not well thought out?
Well, let me answer you by saying this, because the point you make to introduce this new question, I cannot say I'm aware of it. There is a clear line or lines of communication with respect to any interaction, anything to be communicated to the board. I mean, it can be done in different ways, and I will even use some of the basic. I mean, people have the opportunity, whether it's a call to arrange for a meeting, send something in writing, but more so, what, and again, as I say, I'm not sure exactly the specifics you may be referring to, because I don't know of any issue in terms of communicating with the board. What I can tell you though, and of course, this also came up at the symposium, which is the need for the stakeholders to be better organized. And let me explain what I mean by that. We have stakeholders, whether it's PAN, whether it's mass bands, traditional mass bands, fancy mass bands, and the likes, or calypso or soca artists, whichever the likes. And one of the main things that came up out of the symposium is the need for all of these stakeholder grouping to form themselves in some form of association, whereby that will make the whole question of communication, the whole question of sitting down and discussing matters, whether there are things that need fixing or things to direct a particular path going forward. So really and truly, I am not aware of any issue as it relates to not being able to communicate with the board. Of course, the in between the public and the board, if I may say so, is the office. And I'm really not aware of any issue. Anything that came up that need to be discussed came through and was in fact discussed. But if there's anything specific, as I say, I don't know. But of course, there's always room for improvement. So if there is something that is there that needs to be addressed, we'll be more than happy to welcome whatever it is and to take up the slack and do what has to be done. But again, I just go back to that question of the association. It really came up as one of the priority things out of the symposium, because addressing the stakeholders' needs, even in terms of, if I may use the word bargaining, it's what gives them bargaining power as well. And really and truly, for most part, the associations we have, there are either, and for those that exist, they really, in my opinion, they do not operate, and they're not as active as they could and should be really covering that wide audience of the people they represent.
Now, soliciting feedback and having, of course, I suspect that public forum you had also solicited public input outside of the stakeholders, correct?
That's correct. As a matter of fact, it was open to the general public. So we had ministry officials, we had people from the Cultural Foundation, we had past CEOs, past chairperson invited, and we had people from the general public. You know, it was an open stakeholders consultation, symposium, I may add, and it went well. It was well facilitated by Mr. Colin Dow. And the report, as I know, is out. I'm not sure if you were privy to it, but as I say, it's well documented and as indicated.
I would actually love to have the copy of the report. I'm not too sure if you can email that to me. That would be good and helpful for a follow-up conversation, for a follow-up program following the conclusion of Carnival. But I mentioned feedback in the context of a suggestion that was made last year from Kareem Marcel, who is a Grenadian broadcaster in New York, and one of the things that he suggested was that perhaps there ought to be ways of soliciting feedback from the carnival, the visitors and the revelers who come into Grenada for Carnival. So maybe perhaps a survey, maybe some kind of feedback form, virtually or digitally, that visitors can fill out on their way out of Grenada, so that they can provide feedback as well. Do we have that mechanism in place, or perhaps is that something that can be included as part of your feedback formula moving forward?
Well, first of all, let me just inform you that we did have a survey that provided feedback on the events and so forth as well. But I'm really glad you mentioned it, because one of the things that we also undertook, which we saw as extremely important, and I know I mentioned that to you, that is something we are looking at, the question of an economic impact assessment. Now, that assessment doesn't just look at the financial aspect, it also looks at the social aspect of things in terms of what happening. And we had the first phase of that impact assessment. It took place in December. It was able to capture a wide range of information, which has since been reported by Dr. Joanne Turl and her team, who conducted that impact assessment. As a matter of fact, as I speak here, I know information from that assessment is what was used as part of, should I say, the bargaining or the negotiating tool to ensure that we get some additional finances. So of course, it has played its part. And yes, we are looking at the second phase of that impact assessment, which is going to do exactly what you're saying there, which is we're going to have people on the ground doing the actual survey, interviewing people at the airport and so on the way out on the various events to get a good feel and appreciation for what they thought of the event, how they think it can be better, and so forth. I may add though, that is in plan. We are in fact experienced some challenges in terms of some key personnel coming in for that. And the reason why I'm saying it, I will hate to tell you that we're working on it, and if it doesn't happen, it sounds like we didn't do our job. But we are really experiencing problem bringing in the key personnel to to conduct that impact assessment. The challenges we having is that with airlift, for them to come in. So I just want to make sure I mention that in the event that there any serious challenge as it is, because we have been for weeks now, we have been checking for flights, and it has been a serious challenge. But to answer your question, we are working on it. We have done some work on it. The results so far has proven to be very important and impactful enough that it was taken to cabinet, and we are going to get some additional funds as a result of that.
Very well. Now, finally, because we have to get to the next segment, well, two final questions, really.
Yeah.
One has to do with the whole question of Carnival City and the build up to Carnival. That there are some who believe that, and of course, we're getting a comment here saying, will there be, well, no, I think it's, will there be the return of the Carib Roadshow Of course, that's not a question we can direct to the CEO of Spice Mass. That's a question
Well,
for the
you
Grenada
can,
breweries.
but it's
Go
okay
ahead.
because we have since it came up, because it's something that we have tried as well to get going with the breweries, but somehow for different logistical and I say managerial issues, we were not able to get it, but we did make the effort to get that going. Because we see that as an extremely important aspect as well as the whole build up to Carnival. I know you mentioned the question of the Carnival City, but I'm not sure where you are going. You can continue.
Yes. With respect to the Carnival City, where are we with that for 2025? Of course, last year you came in for criticism for the venue that was chosen for it. Has the venue remained the same venue this year?
Well, I am not clear in terms of what you're saying, in terms of last year and this year. We had Carnival City this year. I would, in my opinion, it was a success because the measuring stick and what we were looking for. Could it have been better? Yes. Could it have had better attendance? Yes. But we did that, and the main thrust here was to ensure that once we have the launch, that we had these events going. And if I may just jump ahead, because it may be the whole question of the venue, if that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
We had a venue. We work along with a private entity on the venue, and we had the Carnival City. Of course, we did some review on that already, and there's going to be some further review and analysis in terms of going forward what happened. I can tell you, people came, they loved the venue, but there was also that I'm looking for the right word, that concern that maybe the venue could have been one where kind of lend itself to the general public feeling more free, if I may say so, to be able to come to the venue. But as I said, Carnival City was held. It came true. We had the artists on stage, whether it was the soca artists, the steel bands. We had just about all aspects, traditional mass, the jobs were there. And it went well in terms of that aspect, making sure that the build-up was there, and it was in fact done.
I came Lewis is saying I believe all of those events need to come back. I think he's referring to the road show here. Hence, we're hearing numerous complaints about the carnival vibes missing. I mean, Mr. Noel, of course, you are a pan man. I don't know in the context of pan because I'm also a pan man. In case you didn't know, New Dimension all the way. Sorry, New Dimension. I know you're a Comancheros guy, but around the Pan House, I don't think the carnival vibes is missing because we prepared for Panorama. But there is this feeling that, and this is the second year or the third year I've been hearing this. Last year it was attributed to Beryl. So what is really going on there? Is it because we have more private, we have more options now, we have more private events? Why do you think that there is this public perception that the vibes is just not there?
But I am not sure if it's correct to even say it's a public perception. The vibes is there, and the vibes is well alive. I mean, that may have been the opinion of an individual or one or two. I mean, and I mean, it's a pity that we doesn't have all the time. There's just so much going on that has the vibes there. So, for example, we just finished the preliminaries for both the power soca and the groovy soca, and that had a lot of vibes. I mean, the people were there. The people came out in large numbers. We had it streamed live. There were thousands of people viewing it. People are asking for it. We have this weekend started on Friday. The preliminaries for the Calypso, which is going very well. I was in the Luke Cinema last night.
That's for the
place was filled for bags. And tonight we are going to Pomrose for Calypso Kingdom. Then on Friday we were at Northwest. At Happy Hill, and the vibes is there, and I'm really happy to see the support as well that is given not just to the soca aspect of our carnival, but the calypso. I mean, really impressed with the turnout in terms of the audience, but I must also add the performances, the lyrical contents of a number of the songs which I've heard for this year. It is really, really of a high standard, in my opinion. So saying the vibe's not there, I'm not sure. We are now gearing up for the semifinals coming up next week, as well as traditional mass. And permit me, I want to talk a little bit about traditional mass.
Yes.
Because it's one of the main things that, from Spice Mass perspective, we are pushing and working hard at getting going. So next week we have the Traditional Mass Festival. We are inviting people to come out in a large number. For those of you who attended over the years, you know that there's a significant growth, both in terms of the number of bands participating as well as the people coming out in. More and more, there's a lot of interest and enthusiasm, so much so that this year we changed a little bit of the format in terms of what happened. And to just quickly state it, this year we are going to start off the Traditional Mass Festival at St. Mark from the Burney Government School. And we are going to come down to Hero Square and all the way down to Diamond Street. Now, what that does is give the large audience and spectators that we expect to be able to have a greater viewing and to see the display and portrayal of the bands. So they come down from Bonnet Government School to Hero Square all the way down to Diamond Street. They're going to have we will have the first judging point on the intersection of Diamond Street and Jubilee Street. That's right opposite Shi's Bar. And then the band then go across Jubilee Street and up to, I think it's St. David Street, back to Hero Square. So we have it spread out in this way that the judging will also, so the second judging point will be at Hero Square when we get back up there and for the finale. But we decided to stretch it out, expand it a bit, have it almost in what you consider as a kind of a triangular shape, so more people could spread themselves along the route and see what's going on. And then, as I say, we will end up at Hero Square where the second judging point will be, and people that have the opportunity to view what's going on. Of course, Traditional Mass is tightly twinned with that of the St. Mark's Committee and the cuisine. So we want to make sure that the local cuisine is also there. Last year when we did it, the cuisine was on Diamond Street. We have now moved that and put it on Haddon Smith Street. So what you will have is a street just for the cuisine, and it's outside of the actual route where people have to pass for the parade. So we expect it to be much improved over that of last year, and we're inviting the people to come out. And of course, the Traditional Mass when come Monday. We talk about the production on the street. I want to talk a little bit about that, permit me, so that the Traditional Mass will take again center stage Monday from 1 o'clock on the road. We're really asking the general public to come out and support it. I mean, we have heard all the cries. We want the Traditional Mass to be highlighted. And up to yesterday, we had a meeting with them, just fine-tuning everything for both the festival and on the road. So, you know, it's a lot going on, and we are happy so far with the progress being made with us reaching out to the various stakeholders, whether it's the PAN who we had follow-up meeting with this week. We had follow-up meeting with the Calves Association. So I think we are in a good place. Of course, it's not a perfect situation. It's dynamic. Things will happen. But I think we're well on the way to a very successful Spice Mass 2025.
And as always, Mr. Noel, we will have you back here following Carnival to have a post-mortem conversation again. This time, I'm hoping that you will be part of the broader panel as I requested last year. You had no objection to that last year. So thank you, Mr. Noel. We really have to get to the next segment. But I will be seeing you on the road somewhere.
Yes, thank you.
In costume for Carnival this year. Viewers and listeners, of course, that was Mr. Cecil Noel, the CEO of the Spice Mass Corporation, giving us a sense of the build-up to Carnival 2025. So we'll take our final break today and come back with the final panel segment of the week. So please stand by.
The government is taking a strategic technical approach to ensure effective mitigation and completion of the civil works currently ongoing in Clozier St. John. The project scope has become more comprehensive with focus on land preservation and dewatering of the site. Today, a site visit was led by Permanent Secretary Alva Brown with the expert support of Civil Engineer Timothy Bob, Senior Engineer within the Ministry Kimon Andrews, Contractor Junior Foray and other key personnel on the project. The goal of the visit was to further assess the site where work continues by Foray Construction Services. The community of Clozier remains at the center of this project, ensuring safety and mobility during this time. There are plans underway to assist in the movement of people to and from the community, as well as continued dialogue with the owner of the dwelling home perched on the hillside overlooking the site. Permanent Secretary Brown maintained the continued commitment of his team as they progress to the next steps for the project.
We felt the need to move our consultations outside of the expertise at the ministry and engage with Mr. Bob, who is a very senior engineer consultant on the island, to come with us today to have a look, to provide some guidance, some of his expertise as to how we can continue to ensure that the entire roadway doesn't collapse and we're able to build back this safer for the people of Clozier. We are ensuring that every day that the villagers have a safe pedestrian way to move to and from their homes, to conduct their business, to go to work, etc. In my conversations with them, I've been here 2 or 3 times already, my second time this week. And in my conversations with the villagers, I keep apologizing for the inconvenience. And the feedback I'm getting is that, well, we understand what is happening. On Sunday at 4 o'clock, we will be back here with the Minister for Infrastructure, who is also the Prime Minister, and the MP for the area, to meet with the villagers, to hear the concerns, and to see how we can alleviate some of the challenges that they're facing until we are complete with this, what has become a major project.
During the visit, Civil Engineer Bob highlighted his assessment of the site and the proposed works, which are now to be discussed and decided by the ministry. He further reiterated the sound and good structure of the retaining wall at the site, which has maintained its position despite the slippage.
I spoke with the contractor. I also spoke with a resident who's living in the immediate vicinity of the area. And from what I gleaned from my conversation is that this area was an area that's traditionally been saturated. There seem to have been springs in the area. When the excavation was done for the wall, what would have happened is when they excavated for the foundation, it seems like the water which was saturated in this area found an outlet from the excavation. So as the water flowed out, the soil dropped. The good news is all the movement that has taken place around here has not affected the wall that has been constructed. The wall has stayed where it was constructed, and that's because I was advised that the contractor excavated down to rock, and so the foundation of the wall is on rock. So the wall hasn't moved. So the wall is fine. So the wall can continue to be built where it is. So I would say that side where the wall is, that's more or less been taken care of. The wall is on rock, and they found rock there. The opposite side is where one needs to focus because that's where the water is coming from. So what would need to happen here? Well, first I would recommend that they do some DPLs, some borings, some geotechnical investigation, so that we can determine how deep the rock is, and then a solution would have to be devised for this area, either a wall or a wall with a drain, or a wall with a drain and also a deep French drain to take care of the water. For the wall itself, there's no further assessment needed there because the wall is on rock, and as I said, the wall has proven itself because everything is moving around it and it stayed where it's being constructed. The assessment has to be done on the opposite side where the water is really coming from, and so once that assessment is done, then the best solution to deal with the water on the opposite side would then be ascertained.
And folks, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bob Report. Now, 7 months ago, the Ministry of Infrastructure awarded a road maintenance contract to Foray Construction for the construction of a 10 feet of wall on the Clozier main road, owing to road slippage that started to occur in the area. They were also contracted to build box drains to address the challenges of water flow, as we just saw in that intro video there. Now, during the construction of this wall, the company, that is the contracting company, indicated that they had to expand on the scope of work owing to worsening slippage that eventually affected the home of a resident and continues to affect the home of a resident in the area. Now, the land slippage, as we've seen, has since worsened, with the Clozier Main Road now rendered impassable. Now, of course, the Clozier Main Road is Grenada's second main east-west artery outside of Grenada that connects Grenada's east coast with the west coast. Of course, Clozier connects the northwestern parts of Grenada, where it's whether it's St. John, St. Mark, with St. Andrew. And in fact, many people use that Clozier Road to connect to the eastern parish, Grenada's main eastern parish, St. Andrew, and to a certain extent, St. David and St. Patrick, as opposed to having to go all the way down to St. George's and then having to go up the hills, or perhaps going up to St. Patrick's to go over. So that Clozier Main Road is a critical artery in Grenada, but it's also an area that contains many farms in Grenada. And for this segment, what we're trying to do is to have a conversation about the impacts and implications of this second road slippage and why road slippage issues concerning in Grenada. We saw what happened at Molinere and how that impacted traffic, and how, quite frankly, that impacted the budget of Grenada, the capital budget, if you will, of the state of Grenada. As a programming note, we did invite the Chief Technical Officer in the Ministry of Infrastructure to appear with us, but we got a message from him this morning that he will not be able to appear on the program and has since conveyed his regrets. But we did attempt to reach the government of Grenada to have a representative here this morning, just for full disclosure. So at this point, we're happy to be joined by Mr. Dexter Mitchell, who is not here to discuss Carnival this week. You would think that he would be here to discuss Carnival and cultural matters, but Mr. Mitchell is actually from the community of Clozier in St. John. So we're happy that he can join us here. And of course, we have another guest, Mr. John Perry, who is a project management consultant who does work in project management around those issues. And he's also joining us here on the Bub Report. I believe I've seen this gentleman on other platforms, so we're happy to have you here on the Bub Report for the first time. So gentlemen, welcome to this week's edition of the program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bub.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yes. Now, I want to begin with you, Dexter, as a resident of the area, because I think context is important with respect to road infrastructure issues in Clozier. Of course, outside of that particular recent road slippage, there was also the issue, I believe, of a road that's adjacent to the Shaper School that was an issue, or was it a bridge?
A bridge, yeah.
Yeah, right. So Clozier has had its, I guess, fair share of road infrastructure challenges in recent time. But I want us to talk about the unique, I guess, geology of Clozier in respect of what happens there around springs and water and things like that. What can you tell us about that? Because I think that would be important to set up the context of what we're about to talk about.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Bob, for having me this morning, and to bring across a different perspective away from all the technical stuff, and hopefully later on we'll get into the human impact of
yes,
what's happening with the road. This land slippage has been a forever occurrence. Growing up in Clozier in the late 70s, early 80s, even when you're going back to Clozier, there has always been land slippage. And if you go as far down as Florida in St. John, the Florida government school actually had to be demolished in the early 1980s because it started to disintegrate. It was because of land slippage, because the land was moving. People from that area know of the Campbell's house. The road is always bad in the sense of not potholes, but there's this wavy effect, ripple effect on the road. And that has gone from Florida to the Florida Bridge, all the way up past Rosemount, to the hill known as Wellington Hill, up to Mount Felix, and now where we see this thing is taking place. There has always have to be remedial work done because the road will move. Going to school in Shaper School and walking up from Brothers Estate to Clozier, there was always a readily available supply of water on the side of the road. I mean, you could just stop, and there are several springs that you could get, good clean drinking water from. So that has always been there. So it's not something new. I think one of the things that was missing and been in Clozier recently, up to yesterday, one of the things that several of the residents are talking about is the use of local knowledge. Having the contractors, even with the expertise, speak to local residents who have knowledge of where those sources of water are coming from, because it is impossible to do any work without accounting for the flow of the water. And the water would have to be tapped or dammed or something. But that has always been the case. I mean, to the extent that there is a bridge down in further that we refer to as a brick bridge, because the land always moves. The bridge is completely built over, the land moves, it breaks apart, it becomes inaccessible. Even the Florida Bridge, which is right off the Florida Gap heading up to Rosemount and to Clozier, in our time, that bridge was inaccessible to traffic until years later it was completely repaired. And even now, parts of the bridge still moves. I think recently some remedial work had to be done. So that movement is always there. Once you leave Rosemount heading up to Clozier, it's basically hillside, springs, and water coming down.
Let me bring in Mr. Perry now, because Mr. Perry, there we go. I think, let me, because I think you logged in twice, so let me remove this one. There you are. So, Mr. Perry, I was able to hear your conversation on this on another platform, and you seem to critique, I suppose, the manner in which I guess due diligence went about in determining the best course of action for treating with that particular issue. But what we're hearing from Mr. Mitchell here is that in the context of Clozier, it presents a particular unique topography of constantly shifting land. Yes? So therefore, the question I have for you, for someone who has been involved in construction activity, how then do you account for perhaps having a sort of a static plan in place? Meaning you're going in there with one idea in mind around how to treat with that land slippage, but then the land continues to slip, and therefore you have to always reevaluate what to do in that instance. What say you, sir?
Well, based on what Mr. Mitchell has said, it's absolutely testifies and actually confirms what I've said. All more for a reason, if there's so many variations with the soil movements, there is a reason why you should do your due diligence. And it's quite obvious that was not done. Mr. Mitchell said that this has been happening as far back as the 80s. So anyone beginning with the design phase should, I'm getting a little echo, I'm sorry, let me pause it. Is there a reason I'm getting a little echo?
Let me mute my microphone, hold on.
Yeah.
I'll mute and then you'll go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So again, the nature of these capital projects, okay, there are a lot of checks and balances in place to take care of these projects. And some of the most important checks are done at the design phase of the project. So if you have local knowledge, right, that this is an area that is saturated with water, has underground springs, all more for a reason that in the design phase, you have to ensure that you take all of these things into considerations. And I want you to understand, Dr. Bob, if water was a problem in the design and construction of structures, then obviously we would not have been building piers over lakes. We would not have been building bridges over lakes. For crying out loud, we have a pier right against the water on the carnage. So how was that built? We have a walkway along the carnage right next to the water. How was that built? So I say this to say that even though water may be an issue and there may be the presence of underground springs and so forth, there are ways and means of dealing with these situations. And I think it might be some sort of excuse because of the disastrous approach that was taken on this project to blame everything on the presence of water in the area. I mean, if you look at the roadway prior to excavation, the roadway is intact, relatively intact, until massive amounts of excavation was done. And the critical, and I'm gonna get this in right now from the get-go, the critical mistake that was made to begin with is that the roadway and the roadway embankment was not temporarily showed during construction. I mean, for crying out loud, you were excavating over 15 feet, and there was absolutely no temporary showing. And I think I've sent you some schematics, so I don't know if you have it readily available, so we can take a look at that to see the whole mechanics of the situation. Not sharing.
Yes, I said I'm actually pulling that up now. So please go ahead and yes, you walk me through that schematic. Yes.
So the problem is, again, we talk about checks and balances. First and foremost, in the design phase of a project of that nature, that is so critical and has so many uncertainties, you have to make sure that the first thing you do is a proper, thorough site investigation. The site which you're going to do the design for should be first thoroughly surveyed, so you know exactly where things are at. And you also need to do a thorough soil boring investigation. Now, what that does is going to tell you exactly the strata of the soil. It's going to tell you exactly where the water table reaches below the surface of the soil, right? It's going to give you some technical data like bearing capacity and soil frictional angle, and you know, a bunch of technical stuff we need not get into. But that technical data is absolutely required fundamentally for the design of the retaining wall. We're talking about stuff like bearing pressure. You cannot design a retaining wall without knowing the bearing pressure of the soil. And I've seen Mr. Timothy Bubb, and I understand his position. He has, you know, he's working for the government now, so he has to do a little bit of damage control, right? And I've seen he has said prematurely that, oh, the retaining wall is safe because it did not move, and residents in the area told him that it did not move. Now, I am sure, as an engineer, Mr. Timothy Bubb would be aware that there are several modes of failures when it comes to a retaining wall. So he has said that the contractor has dug all the way to rock, which is good. So that's good bearing pressure. It's bearing on rock, right? But that is only one mode of failure for retaining wall. There's also the mode of failure of sliding, right? That's good, it's on rock. There's also another mode of failure for retaining wall, which is overturning. And that has not been tested. That is only tested when the retaining wall is backfilled and vehicles are moving over the roadway. So I think that what Mr. Bubb has said was a little, I'm talking about the engineer, Mr. Timothy Bubb, is a little premature to say, oh, well, the retaining wall has not moved, so everything is okay. One thing I applaud what he's doing is that he decided that he does need boring investigation, which is a little bit sad because, as we've said, a thorough boring investigation would have provided technical data that would have been required for the design of the retaining wall. So I am kind of confused that a retaining wall will be designed, built without that level of technical data.
I'm trying to pull up the PDF here. I had to convert it. Is this the schematic we're referencing here?
Is that the first one that says existing condition, or is that no? That shows like the one that actually fails with the car.
Okay, so all right, so let me find.
There's one with like a little pole in the ground against the soil embankment.
Yes, I see that. That's okay.
That
Let me
won't be
see if I can
appropriate
put
for
that
this
one
now.
up.
I mean, we could start with the
Okay.
first one, the existing condition, and then we can go to that one, so people get a
Right.
general idea of how the soil mechanics work.
Yes. All right. Yeah, but please proceed.
Right. So as we were saying, initially, one of the most critical mistakes that was made also, because the soil was not temporarily supported before excavation, what you have is a situation, you have a soil that's not supported, you have a vehicle passing on top of that soil, which adds additional pressure, downward pressure on the soil. Now that soil is going to try to move to accommodate that pressure, and there is nothing supporting that soil. So of course it's going to fail, it's going to collapse, it's going to fail. And that is exactly what's happening. I mean, you see there's a lot of talk and much to do about the water main broke and that caused the soil to fail. But it's actually the other way around. The soil failed because there was nothing to hold it in place. So once that soil settled, that actually broke the water main that was underneath the roadway. And of course, the soil became waterlogged. But again, keep in mind, this soil is not temporarily supported. So if it's waterlogged, vehicles are passing on top of it, there is absolutely certainty that it will fail.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to bring back, I'm having some challenges with uploading the slide, but we're working on it. But in the meantime, I do have a comment from Karen Roden Lane. Good morning, Auntie Karen. That's how I call her because I knew her, Karen. I knew Karen during my days on Four Roads, Grenville Street. And yes, folks, good things come from Four Roads, okay? I just thought I'd put that out there. But Karen is saying, Dexter, thanks for being really bang on with the historic knowledge. I am so much older than you and have experienced the slippage. I believe it is part of the fault line that runs all the way to Mount Nesbitt and Mabuya. There is a map of Grenada that shows that fault line. Dexter, can you talk about that fault line in that area? Let me just unmute you there. Yes, but go ahead now. Go ahead, Dexter.
Yeah, I'm glad Karen brought it up. I think
yes.
She's my godmother, you know, actually.
Oh, you see, Grenada is such a small place, you know.
Yeah.
And for Grenadians,
small,
my paternal grandmother is actually from Guave, and I think that's where I get my boisterousness from. She's from the Lance. For those who know, Mabel. That's my
all
grand
of
aunt.
Grenada originated
from Guave, right? Okay. Okay, so go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad she brought it up. On Friday when I was up in Clozier, I was having a discussion with a resident from further, and he alluded to the fault line, that there is this continuation of the land slippage and we know right now there is a major fault, a major slippage in Mabuya that is affecting traffic there. In fact, that area is completely closed off. So yeah, like I said, that has been continuous. When you drive up Clozier, like I said, the Wellington Hill, that road is riddled because of the continuous movement of the land. The bridges continue to move. I saw somebody made a comment that it was not just the bridge before the St. John Christian Secondary School, but there was a land slippage just off the bridge heading up to Shepherd School. So that area is prone to land slippage. Mr. Perry is dealing with the technical stuff. I'm not going to get into that. Like I said, I'm more concerned about the effect it is having on the residents of Clozier and Grenada by extension. I think, Dr. Bob, in your introduction, you eloquently alluded to the importance of the East-West corridor. It is the only way to get from the East Coast to the West Coast and vice versa without having to go through St. George's or go back to Sutters into Grenville. So it's a very, very, very economic conduit for Grenada. And then of course there is the farming, not only the farmers of Clozier, but because there was such large estates, the Mount Felix estate where the land slippage has occurred right now, that was owned by L.A. Purcell, that has been divided up and it is owned by several persons now. The Belvedere estate, the lands up in Clozier. Clozier itself was an estate owned by a French plantation owner named whose last name was Clozier, hence the name. So there are a lot of farmers who are affected. There are people now who have to drive from Guelph and make that route, either go around go to St. George's, go through Grenville and up to Grenada and through Belvedere to Clozier, or go the other way around. So from that standpoint, the human tool and the economic tool, the social tool is my concern and the concerns of several of the residents. Let me just say though that the Prime Minister and the MP is going to be in Clozier today at the community center at 4 p.m. to listen to the residents. It's 2 weeks after, it's exactly 2 weeks after, but they are meeting with the residents this afternoon. So hopefully some of the major social and economic issues are going to be dealt with. I think people understand this is a force of nature. Yes, technically, as Mr. Perry alluded to, some things should have been done and could have been done differently. But this is the way nature works. And they understand that it is going to take some time to have this thing repaired. I mean, a lot of the time they've been told over the last 2 weeks, we're working on something could be rectified and so on. It's not going to happen. So I think the concern is how can they cope as comfortably as possible over the next several months. School is going to be open in the next 6 weeks. They have to get the produce out. They have to conduct business. They have to go pay their bills. How can life be made easier? And for those who are not living in Clozier, just think about your lives and your livelihood is suddenly disrupted in a major way. You don't have access to water. If you do, you have to walk across.
Or for the farmers who would not have access to their land.
Yes, in that area. The wooden bridge that was constructed, Dr. Bob, it continues to move because of the continued land slippage. Because at the northern end of the land slippage, the water continues to come. The springs continue to flow. Those waters have not been contained, and you can, up to yesterday, you were seeing 2 definitive streams of water that are coming from springs in that area. So the bridge that was constructed, even that is moving. Even that has become very treacherous now for the villagers who have to use it. I mean, it's just inconvenient. It's tough because you cannot carry anything. If you go down to Guelph, you cannot carry too much groceries because you have to take a taxi up to Mount Felix, then walk across the land, and then walk further into Clozier. I did it on Friday. Another friend from Clozier, we did it, and it's very, very, very difficult to do. Also means that social life is cut down because you have to get to that point before outside gets dark. You don't want to be around that area when it gets dark.
And critically as well for the folks who want to perhaps traverse or seek medical assistance, for example, at the Maribor Hospital. They now have to go all the way to St. George's to do that.
It affects the businesses in Clozier because several of the shops were doing very brisk business because of the traffic. The guys would stop and get lunch or breakfast. The sales van would travel us from Guelph. When they are finished with the western route, they can go through Clozier and go on the East Coast. So that no longer exists. I mean, by 7 o'clock, there's absolutely nobody outside in Clozier right now. There's no activity right now. So that I think I'm happy for the residents that the PM has finally decided to meet with them as the Minister of Infrastructure, but not just to discuss the technical issues and how quickly that can be repaired, but how can they cope in the immediate future with having this major disruption in their lives and livelihood.
All right, Mr. Perry, I'll bring you back here. I was able to get the schematic up now, so please continue. Yes.
Okay. Well, while I do understand that all Mr. Dexter Mitchell has said, and of course, knowing the history of the area, I would have Mr. Mitchell know that this is what engineers are here for, that you have challenges in nature, and they are there to actually provide solutions to those problems. And considering all those things, considering the possibility, knowing that any disruption would have caused significant financial impact on the people in the area, this in itself is more reason why that extreme care and critical analysis should have been taken in the design phase of this project. And geotechnical engineers who understand subsurface investigation should have been on this project to begin with. Again, as I've said, you don't design a retaining wall in an area waterlogged with underground springs, and then in the middle of the construction, you decide that that is when you're going to do boring logs, it's absolutely bad business. And it's neither here nor there at this stage to blame anyone. But the problem is, it is critical that when disasters like this happen and you make mistakes, that you analyze where you went wrong. And I want you to understand, because of the nature of these projects, where there's so many checks and balances at the design phase, checks and balances at the construction phase, and checks and balances at the review and supervision phase, that when things like this happen, it shows an entire systematic failure. That is what it was. And there is absolutely, at this stage, not good judgment for us to make excuses as to why those things happen. But we have to look at them, accept them, analyze why they happen, and ensure that it never happens again. And it's good to know there's a fault line, and it's good to know there's a lot of water in the area. As I have
but Mr. Perry, to be fair, this is not about making excuses. I think we have to be able to contextualize all of this. Now, you also have to appreciate that this is not necessarily a today project as well. This started a while ago. The previous administration also had challenges with this project. So I don't think it's a matter of just making excuses or just wanting to simplify by pointing blame. There is a more systemic, a unique set of infrastructural challenges that are presented in the Clozier community.
I agree.
That are different from other parts of Grenada.
Oh, absolutely.
But please proceed, yes. I'm just being devil's advocate because the CEO is not here. So go ahead, please.
We're actually saying the same thing. I totally agree with you, Dr. Bob. And because of that background knowledge with the issues that exist, all more for a reason why I'm not blaming, previous administration. I'm just talking in generality of the situation of whoever engineer or engineers that should be working on the project would know that if those situations exist, that you have to be more careful and critical in your design. Remember, we do design for seismic all the time. They do design for seismic in California. They do design for seismic all over the world. So this is not something that's strange. You can actually design, even in your regular residential and commercial design, you take into consideration seismic design for the worst case scenario of a hurricane, or you take into consideration of the worst case scenario for an earthquake. This is something you actually do in residential design. And you put measures in place. For example, just to give you a little hint, in these major tall buildings and high-rise buildings, there are specific walls called shear walls that is designed to resist earthquake loading and seismic loading. So again, if you're going to embark on such a project, and I do agree with you, I think there might have been some misunderstanding and poor judgment in the sense that they did not understand the gravity of the situation. I don't understand why, because we're used to slippage across the western side. Again, the gentleman, Mr. Mitchell said, this is something that is common knowledge in the Clozier area. So, almost a reason why a thorough, boring investigation should have been done. And again, I keep reiterating, I don't understand how you design a retaining wall in an area that is waterlogged without having all the technical data to do that. And based on what I've gathered, this was designed internally in the Ministry of Infrastructure. And rightfully so, Mr. Alvin Brown.
He's the permanent secretary.
Right.
Yes.
Great. Awesome. So he has said that he saw the need. So I'm glad he saw that need to look towards outside consulting, because obviously he felt that this cannot be handled internally. And that is not unique. It's okay. It's not a reflection of the horrible nature of the Ministry of Infrastructure. It just means that they may not have the technical ability currently to handle it. And that is why you would look toward outside consulting. I mean, we do that out here in New York. New York State DOT don't do internal, hardly ever do internal design. They would hire outside consultant firms, and they will do a bit of supervision via meetings and progress reports. Same thing with the NCA. You know, they don't do they hardly ever do the internal design. And it offers a sort of checks and balance. So you get an outside consultant firm who does the design, and the experienced people in the Ministry of Infrastructure can review the design. And based on the knowledge,
and that's what happened, I suspect, through the tendering process. So maybe there has to be an examination as
well, the
to
tendering process, Mr. Bob,
yes, go ahead.
respectfully, has to do with the actual selection of the actual contractor.
Right.
And again,
are you saying before that?
Yeah. The consultant part, the design phase, that's the design phase. The tendering part, when you tender for bids for construction, that's to select a contractor. But again, let me be clear, and we have to accept and be intellectually honest about what happened. That if you're excavating, let me just give you an idea. If you're excavating more than 5 feet, you need temporary shoring, not just to hold back the soil in place, but it is critical for the safety of the young men and women that may be working in the trench. I mean, I have one of the pictures that I sent you where the foundation was being poured, and these guys are working at the bottom of over 16-foot slope. God forbid that collapses on top of them, they'll be in a hell of a lot of trouble. Again, there was a situation where the gentleman's house was perched, where you have almost 30 feet of slope hanging over guys who are pouring a foundation at the bottom of that slope. And there was also, let me tell you this, there was ample opportunity, right? And engineer to engineer, they understand that and they know that. So this is not something that can be denied. There was ample opportunity to save this man's house. And I could understand what he was going through. You know, I sympathize with him. I sympathize with the people of Clozier whose finances have been dramatically affected. All right? So if you would see one of the clips, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, just look at this, Dr. Bob. Do you think that it's safe that men should be working in that ditch with the sides of that slope unprotected? Absolutely not. It's you know, it's a danger to their life. So let's get back to the man's house. Initially, when there was a first onset of cracks or settlement, there was ample opportunity to save this man's house. Okay, there was a talk. The site supervisor came on television and said, "Oh well, through the Ministry of Infrastructure, we're gonna thinking about putting some gabion baskets and and a gabion basket. Just to give you an idea, Dr. Bob, it's a very relatively inexpensive retaining wall that could have been used as a temporary retaining wall while the permanent retaining wall is being built. I'll tell you what a gradient basket is about. It's basically welded wire mesh where you pack stones into, large rocks, and you kind of lean it back about a minimum 6 inches against the slope, and that will serve as a retaining wall. Now, my friend, that can be built all up to 18 feet, and that would have adequately supported the slope behind the man's house, and would have prevented failure as a temporary wall. Again, as I said, this is relatively cheap to build. You know what I'm saying? And you couldn't sacrifice it, meaning that you could have kept it in place after you build a permanent retaining wall, and then you could have backfilled, and that would have actually lessened the amount of structural fill you need to backfill. So that would have been a good thing. And the gabion baskets, because of the nature of the construction, would have provided adequate drainage behind the retaining wall, which is a good thing. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. This is all very technical stuff here, and I really wish
it's actually.
But I'm glad that you were able to break down that technical stuff into layman's language, so that people like myself can understand. That's what I was getting at, and the point I was making is I really wish the CEO was able to join us to again add to the richness of this conversation.
Oh, sure. I would have been happy to be here.
Yes, yes. I'm not too sure why he canceled, but you know those things tend to happen sometimes,
Yeah,
and it
those things
happened on
tend to
that.
happen.
It happens on it happened under the previous iteration, the previous administration as well. Sometimes they just randomly don't show up, but that
Well,
happens.
you know, with a situation like this, is obvious. I mean, there's a lot of heat, you know, and there's a lot of serious questions that would be asked. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Just to
yeah,
give you an
yeah.
idea, so we're clear on this on Dr. Buck. So
Yes,
again,
yes,
we're
sir.
talking about checks and balances. Now, I said at the design phase, there's checks and balances. No matter how good of an engineer you are, there's always a lot of cross-checking at the design phase. That is critical. That's the first step. I mean, I'm sure in your discipline, there's always, you know, in every discipline, I think there's some sort of cross-checking to get the most efficient product. You see what I'm saying? So at that design phase, there's checks and balances. In the contractual phase, right, when this is being built, there's another check and balance. And the critical check and balance is supervision of a project. And that is why usually you will have an engineer on site from more than likely the Ministry of Infrastructure representing the government's interest. That is critical. We know the nature of this business. Contractors on a whole, anybody who ever dealt with contractors, even in residential construction, will tell you that contractors sometimes, I'm not saying this is the case on this project, but obviously there was mistakes made and we know where the responsibility lies. But it's a known fact throughout the construction industry that contractors will try their best to cut corners and to make as much money as they can on a project because installing certain things may be additional cost to them. So that is why usually you will have a resident engineer on the project who is representing the government interest to supervise the project to ensure that the project is being built according to the contractual documents, or what we'll call locally according to the drawings. That is the importance of a resident engineer, so that no corners are being cut. And if there are things that are not being done adequately, safely, on budget or on time, there, the resident engineer can call for certain changes to ensure that is being done. Now, any resident engineer that's worth a little bit of his weight and comes to a site and sees this will immediately shut down the site and say to the contractor, no, 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 no. You cannot pour a 14 wide footing with 16 feet of soil hanging over men in the trench. That is absolutely horrible construction practice. They know that. I know that. And anybody, the experienced people in Grenada in this business, they themselves know that.
Absolutely. I now want to get to some viewer comments. Nicole is at look restrictive budgets. Let me pull up that comment here properly and bring back Dexter here. Look at restrictive budgets and available options, make limited choice. How many with the expertise can assist? We get it, but moving forward, what are your consultant fees? What are your best options? Are you prepared to have you? But Mr. Perry, let me ask you this: have you ever proposed a bid? You know, have you ever bid to conduct any construction work in Grenada? Any road maintenance work? Anything like that?
No,
Anything
not
of the
at
sort?
all, not at all. I'm sure
Why
there are a lot
not?
of Grenadians who are
Why not?
proficient enough to do that stuff.
As a patriot, I mean, one might expect that you might want to give your expertise back to the national community.
Honest with you, if we're being, you know, honest
Yes.
here, I have initially when this started, a gentleman, a friend of mine in New York, got in touch with let's say the appropriate people, and I did advise how to proceed to mitigate what was going on. As I said, a simple thing as an installation of a Gabion basket, and there was talk of it at the bottom of the man's house, would have saved that man a lot of trouble. A simple thing as the installation of sheet piling to hold up the roadway or a soldier pile and lag and wall. I mean, I think everybody's familiar with that. Would have held that roadway in place and would have allowed safe movement of vehicles throughout the site, would have not collapsed, and it would have allowed the people of Clozier to continue their daily activities and not inhibit and cause so much devastating damage to their financial livelihood. This would have been a nice project, just had that been done.
Yeah, we have another question. Did the A&E team, I'm guessing, have any dewatering plan if it is suspected live springs in the area? I think Mr. Bub did indicate something about rerouting the water or something to that effect.
After the fact.
Right.
Yeah,
but Dexter, go ahead. Yes.
No, saying the rerouting of the water has not been done as yet. In fact, I think they would have to identify the source because it is a massive area. So you would have to identify exactly where the springs originate from to be able to reroute the water. So that has not been done as yet. But further to the point you made earlier on, and to pick up on what Mr. Perry is saying,
yes,
I'm really, really hopeful that Mr. Perry used the term intellectual honesty, and that we are honest with ourselves to recognize that an error took place, and it's not about blaming people and past administration and present administration. An error was made. We have to, as human beings, put our hands up and accept that we made an error, and in moving forward, take the necessary steps to prevent this from happening. Because of what we have alluded to historically, this movement of land is going to take place again, not necessarily in the same spot. And we have to be able to treat it with urgency, with precision, so that we are not in this predicament. We have to understand when those things happen, it affects the lives and livelihood of people. Mental health is affected, the social life, the economic lives, the education of the kids are going to be affected. And not just Clozier, we are talking about Grenada. This is a major tourism conduit. When the cruise ships start arriving in October, the large coasters that do the half-island tours, when they go up to Gorgov or to Victoria to the Nutmeg Pool, then they would go through Clozier to go to the Grenada Lake and then head back down to St. George's. So there are some major ramifications. So I hope that and there's been a lot of back and forth about the politics and so on. It's not about politics. This is about people and people's lives and livelihood. And yes, mistakes were made. Let us as adults acknowledge the errors were made, and let us get on board all the expertise, including, as I said before, the local knowledge. But there are several people who live around the area who can tell you, okay, you need to go up the mountain. This is where the spring is at. This is where one spring comes from, and so on. And utilize that local knowledge, and let us get this thing fixed as quickly as possible, and take on board that information to prevent further disasters.
A very measured response there. I would say this about the context of the current zeitgeist in Grenada. Everything seemed to be political, and quite frankly, it's just exhausting. It's so exhausting that I do not even engage with people anymore on my personal Facebook on Grenadian politics, because everything is seen through a yellow-green lens, and there is so much more to that. Especially in this context here, this is not a yellow-green thing, right?
No, and that's why I came on, Dr. Bob. And to be quite honest, to make this point, this is the first time I've done since I started doing public engagements that I've been nervous, because I have seen the political backlash for
everything is political.
And it is sad that Grenada is a democratic country, and we are free to express our views. And something that affects.
I think we are free to express our views. It's just you have the trolling, and you have the ad hominem attacks and all of that. And this platform is not about that.
Absolutely. Don't do a podcast like I do, Mr. Mitchell, because I get a lot of heat, and they misinterpret a lot of what I'm saying. And I tell them a lot of what I'm saying and doing is with genuine love as a patriot. And if they notice, I'm an equal opportunity firer. I give heat to the head. I give heat to the I started out by giving heat to Peter David, and he accepted it, and he understood. You know what I'm saying?
What would be useful, Dr. Bob, is if people forget all the social media postings and even the television cameras, but if you go up and have conversations with the individuals, because sometimes, because of the atmosphere that we alluded to, you might not get the true story from the residents, but when you go and you have the conversations with them, and I have been up there since this thing, even before this thing has started, for the entire year, I've been going to Clozier almost every Friday. and there's a swelling of frustration, especially over the last 2 weeks, that people are starting to feel, well, one, neglected, so it is good that the Prime Minister is going up this afternoon.
Yeah.
And two, that their lives have been interrupted. So as accommodating as they have been and understanding, it is getting increasingly tougher because there is no quick fix. And they are not asking for a quick fix, but they are asking for accommodations in terms of transportation, in terms of, for example, having the GCNA go to Clozier to purchase nut from the farmers, which I think is going to happen. Hopefully there should be an announcement soon that hopefully that this should happen this week. But over the last 2 weeks, without proper information, without attention to the challenges, it was frustrating for them. And it is going to be frustrating for them because, like I said, their lives have been interrupted. But hopefully, coming out of the meetings today, some better ideas. And then for the long term, let us address the fact that maybe there is a fault line. These things are going to continue to happen. So we have to take mitigating measures to prevent it from happening or to prevent such major disasters affecting Clozier and its environs and Grenada as a whole.
Gentlemen, this has been such a spirited conversation, notwithstanding the CEO, Mr. Blash, isn't here with us, but we will be certainly following that story. And there are other issues in the constituency of St. John that we have been following. Of course, the Woodford-Reno issue there. And now we also heard about issues of sand mining. I thought sand mining was banned in Grenada, but I'm hearing that people are just taking sand in Guave, Dexter. Is that trucks are going there at 3 o'clock in the morning? That is a story that we'll be following up on as well, to see what's happening there. And then Reno is also constructing a new jetty down in Woodford down there, close to adjacent to Perseverance. We're wondering why there is a need for construction of a new jetty when in fact there is also a jetty there in place for a lot of the shippers who bring in heavy stuff. So there's so many issues that ecologically, because if we think about St. John is an ecologically biodiverse place in Grenada. A lot of people don't necessarily appreciate that. You have Concord, but besides Concord waterfalls, you have a lot of black sand beaches in St. John. You have a lot of the land up in the Woodford area that's considered pristine land and all of that, So there is a lot there in St. John. And I suppose heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? As the MP, the irony is the MP for St. John is the Minister of the Environment as well. So there's a lot that needs to be, hopefully we'll have on the program someday. But Mr. Perry, over to you, sir, for some closing comments.
Yeah, well, again, as Mr. Mitchell has said, it affords an opportunity for we to have learned something from. And with some of the experiences we had on the Molinere project, I really thought we'd have learned a little more on this project because on the Molinere project, we had a broken water main that caused the whole of St. George to be out of water for a while. And there were a lot of changes in resident engineering. So we understand that. But the main point is that I believe that in this project and the mistakes made, we have an opportunity to learn a lot of things. And there's room for improvement and salvaging a bit of what is taking place. And I have to applaud the ministry that they went outside of their domain and looked for outside consultant help from people who may know a lot more than they would at this moment in this particular issue. So that's a good thing. So let's see what happens with the outside consultant help. And again, it's a good move to actually go into the area today and hear some of the concerns. I can understand the frustration. I can understand the man whose house is pretty much collapsed, So again, there's an opportunity to learn a lot. Document the mistakes, have a conversation, be intellectually honest about what happened. And that's the only way we can move forward. You see what I'm saying? And we can take it from there.
Dexter, in closing, there is a comment from Penelope Jeleno that we want to highlight. How can the wider Grenadian community support the residents?
That's a very good question. There are some special needs individuals in Clozier. There are a couple of folks who are bedridden, so contributions of adult pampers and so on And if people reach out to me or through you, Dr. Bob, we can discuss some specifics that can be done. I wouldn't want to get into too much details, but there are some individuals who can certainly use the help, and we've done our part in the past, and we can hope to do some more of that.
Very well. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Dexter. Yes.
Oh, my closing. No, I was saying, I think it was the elections of 1984. The late George Brizan came to Clozier during the campaign, and he made a statement that Clozier was the most independent village in Grenada. Well, of course, he got a huge round of applause. So the people of Clozier have always been very independent, very proud. So they are understanding of what is taking place, but we need intellectual honesty. And I hope the meeting this evening brings a degree of that. Not to sugarcoat anything, not to respond to anything, but to let us know, look, this is a long-term project. We are going to get it right, but these are the concessions that we are going to have to make, whether it's providing transportation at a concessionary to the residents, designating some special vehicles in Clozier as official transportation in case there are emergencies and so on, working with the business community to ensure that the sales van, if they cannot come through Guelph, will go through Grenada and from the Clozier and those things, ensure that GCN shows up regularly to buy the nutmegs from the farmers, that the garbage collection is reconstructed in a way that serves the community. And then also to include in the discussion what Dr. Perry is talking about, the local knowledge that utilize people, and I don't want to call it names, but there are guys who grew up in Clozier who are in their 60s and the 70s, and they know they can walk you through Clozier in its entirety. Guys who've made a living hunting and fishing, and they know these areas very, very, very well. And this is, like I said, this is going to continue to happen. The roads are going to move, the land is going to continue to move, but we have to be able to mitigate against these major disasters and these major interruptions. We just cannot afford, socially, mentally, economically, we cannot afford to have those disasters in this day and age to make those mistakes. And I hope that we confront it in an honest way and create a permanent fix moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. Gentlemen, Anthony is saying, sir, I believe you are from Green Street. I'd like to see a forum where you and Grenadian geologists can discuss the Carnage area, which showed its sympathy when Mount Pelée eruption back in 1902, with the Mount Pelée eruption in 1902. Of course, the Carnage is an issue as well, especially with sea level rise. I didn't know you were from Green Street, sir, Mr. Perry, but it's good to know that. Man. Okay. maybe that's why you had some special. Maybe that's why you had some special fire for Peter David, because you all are from the town of St. George together. I didn't know that.
He's a family friend. He's a family friend. That's why I could have been so honest with him. You see what I'm saying? And he didn't come after me. Maybe you might be a campaign manager for the movement. You never know. Go ahead,
to
be honest with you, I'd love to see a third party, because politically, I believe it will give the electorate a little more bang for their buck. But yeah, Green Street Carnage guy. And I've spoken. I'm on Hanovi Global News. That's a personal podcast that I have. I've spoken extensively of how heartbroken I am about the Carnage. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And I was just about to ask Mr. Mitchell, what does the Carnage and Clozier people have in common? Why do they feel so rough?
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for appearing on the Bob Report this week. Viewers and listeners, we want to thank you as well for your participation by way of the comments. Of course, in this era of climate change, road infrastructure issues are much more critical now, given everything that's happening. So we certainly want to be able to highlight all of those issues, including what's happening up there in Clozier. Of course, we have that recent memory of what happened in Molinere and how that disrupted traffic and economic activity on the Western Corridor. And here we have, on this major artery, this is a major artery outside of Grande Tang, that Grande Tang over the Hills Road, and that can have significant implications for the residents, for the farmers. Again, Dexter articulated, for the other people, the sales vans, for medical emergencies, all of those issues, for people who go to work whether it's on the eastern side or the western side. So many issues that this particular road issue is bringing to the fore that we attempted to highlight here today. So on behalf of the producers of the Bub Report, I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bub. I'm wishing everyone a pleasant and productive week ahead, and I'll be seeing you in Grenada shortly, of course, for the carnival. For those who don't know, I am a professional reveler. I love my mass, so I'll be in Grenada for carnival, and of course for the upcoming Afrexim Bank Summit that will be happening in Grenada as well. So on behalf of the producers, again, I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bub. We will see you next week for another installment of the Bub Report. Take care. Bye-bye. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bub Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.